Good evening, everyone. Hopefully, you're having a wonderful day so far. I got a good one for you today. It's question period from October 9th. And just a quick one. If you like this content, please leave a like and subscribe and definitely comment. And other than that, let's get into it.
Oral questions. Questions orales. L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we know that this Prime Minister isn't worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. The Liberals have paralyzed this Parliament by refusing to respect your judgment, to produce the documents and give them to the RCMP. This is a $400 million scandal. Liberal-appointed executives gave money to their own businesses. 186 conflicts of interest, according to the Auditor General. Will the Liberals respect your judgment and give the evidence to the RCMP so we can get back to work? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, what the Leader of the Opposition is saying is not true. This matter has been referred to the committee for further study. Will the Conservatives decide to follow that example?
The NDP Liberals are not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. The Prime Minister has ground the work of Parliament to a halt by refusing to respect your ruling. The government must hand over evidence to the police concerning the $400 million spending scandal that saw Liberal appointees give millions of dollars to their own companies. Wow. The Auditor General says there's 186 conflicts of interest in this scandal. Will the Prime Minister end the cover-up, respect your ruling, give the police the information so that we can have accountability and get back to work?
Yeah, or shut down Parliament and call an election because nothing's happening. Our government is essentially stalled out because they won't produce documents to the RCMP about this SDTC scandal that's apparently already up to $400 million. One of the worst scandals we've seen in forever. So let's see those documents. I think the last ones that they gave us was pretty much all blacked out, and that's why they're having this issue.
Leader of the House in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's demonstrably false what the Leader of the Opposition is saying, because your ruling was to send this matter to the House and Procedure Affairs Committee for more study. And so, in fact, it is only the Conservatives that are now obstructing their own obstruction, because they don't want this to go to committee, because it would demonstrate that they are trying to upend charter rights and override police independence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliament can get back to work this minute if the government will just hand over the evidence to the police about this $400 million Liberal spending scandal. I found it interesting. They say everybody's going to lose their charter rights if the police get evidence into this $400 million Liberal spending scandal. No, what will happen is that the Liberal nominees and appointees who engaged in 186 conflicts of interest to stuff their own pockets will be held criminally accountable, and Canadians might get their money back. Why won't they hand over the evidence, respect your ruling, so we can get back to work around here?
It's kind of funny how the government is fine infringing on our charter of rights and freedoms when we have a big protest and they don't like it, and they start locking our bank accounts, and they start arresting people, breaking into their vehicles, running them over with horses, other stuff like that. But when it comes to the possible charges on themselves, they'll stop government and just to save their own butts.
The Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, what's interesting about this is that there's actually proof that the Leader of the Opposition is saying is false, because in your ruling you said this matter needs to go to the House and Procedures Affairs Committee for further study, because this is unprecedented in what the Conservatives are putting forward, because, as the RCMP mentioned, it would upend charter rights and it would blur the lines between judicial and legislative independence. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives can follow your ruling and we can all go back to work, which is what exactly the Canadians want us to do. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all members for being very patient and not taking the microphone. I'm going to remind the honourable member from South Shore St. Margaret's to do the same. The honourable Leader of the Opposition.
A year ago today, a sadistic and genocidal death cult, Hamas, carried out the biggest attack on Jews since the Holocaust and has 100 more hostages. Bring them home. Here at home, though, our Jewish friends and neighbors have been doubly victimized as anti-Semitic mobs take to the streets shouting, "From Palestine to Lebanon, Israel will soon be gone. There's only one solution: intifada, revolution." Will the government clearly and unequivocally condemn these genocidal chants from hateful mobs on our streets?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, Judy Weinstein, Vivian Silver, Ben Mizrachi, Netta Epstein, Shir Georgi, Alexandre Luc, Idal Vital Kaploun, Tiferet Lapido. May their memories be a blessing. It was my honor to have met with their families here at home and in Israel. And on the anniversaries of Hamas' horrific attacks, my promise to their loved ones is the following: year after year, Canadians will honor their memories, and to Jewish people, we stand with you. We won't relent until the last hostage returns home.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And yet we don't really see our government doing anything about these mobs of people here in Canada who burn the Canadian flag, who throw it on the ground and yell "Death to Canada." And yes, put Jews in Canada who've possibly never even been to Israel, were born and raised here, and put them in danger. And that's what the Leader of the Opposition, Pierre Poilievre, is asking. It's like, what are you doing to protect these people here in Canada from these groups that we know have either been led into Canada by this mass immigration that you brought in, or has been here for years?
She does relent every single day, just like her leader. I asked a very simple question. Mobs have taken to the streets in front of Jewish homes, hospitals, and businesses to shout anti-Semitic hate slogans. I quoted a number of them and invited the minister to rise to her feet and specifically condemn them, to stand with Jews against the anti-Semitism that has been allowed to proliferate on our streets. So once again, will she condemn these anti-Semitic chants?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Solicitor General.
Mr. Speaker, today is October 7th, an anniversary of a horrific attack on Jews. 1,200 people killed, over 200 people taken hostage. Our solidarity is with Jews in Israel and with Jewish people in Canada and right around the world. What we stand up against absolutely is the amount of hatred that we have seen in this country and countries around the world, where people will target Jewish Canadian schools, daycares, and synagogues for the acts that they have a problem with on another side of the world. We are better than that in this country. We need to stand up against that kind of hatred in support of Jewish people and in place of all people who defend their ability to worship how and whom they choose.
Well, thank goodness there's one Liberal there who stood up and condemned them. Now, I would like the House Leader to do the same, because she was the one who was answering the questions before, and she's not answering the question. And there's the issue right there. She's the House leader.
The honourable member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, seniors came here to the Hill last week to ask for old age security to be increased by 10%. According to a poll, 79% of people agree with that. 79%. And elected officials voted unanimously for it. We just need the government to grant royal recommendation to C319, but it doesn't want to because it says that that's not how things are done. We are bringing up seniors' living conditions. We're bringing up democracy. And meanwhile, the government keeps talking about procedure. When will they stop dragging their feet and grant royal recommendation? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, I have visited with many seniors in my riding over the weekend. I have dialogued with them, and knowing my honourable colleague, I'm sure that he has been very clear with seniors. For example, the fact that he is opposed to lowering retirement age to 65, the Bloc Québécois voted against that. When we increased the guaranteed income supplement, the Bloc voted against, and when we brought in dental care for thousands of seniors in Quebec, the Bloc Québécois voted against that. The member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, seniors are mobilizing to increase their pensions. 79% of people agree. All parties voted for it at committee, and yet the Liberals just keep talking to us about procedural problems. And the same thing applies to the issue of supply management. Farmers want C-282. All of the parties voted for it, but it's stuck in the Senate, and once again the Liberals are refusing to do anything. In both cases, the Liberals are talking to us about procedural problems, but is the real problem that the Liberals just don't care?
No, the real problem is we just don't have the money for it. That's an extra $3 billion on the books that we don't have. And since all of this is filmed and it's live, the Liberals can't come out and say, yeah, we won't give a royal assent because we don't have the money. I mean, there it is. Now, I don't agree with the bill. So I actually think that it was a good thing that we raised the retirement age to 67 because people are living longer than they ever have before, so they can save an extra 2 years of money. That's just me. But I honestly think why they're not getting this royal assent is, yes, we don't have enough money. And if they give this royal assent right now, then the Bloc will ask for something else. And the Liberals are worried about that. Though, that's just coming from a guy who just reads a bunch of stuff off the internet.
Culture, Niagara food.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My honourable colleague is well aware that it was our party that initiated the supply management program. It's our party that supported the supply management program through its history. It's a very successful program, and we supported 282, and we urge the other place to move on this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good job. L'honorable député de New.
I don't even know who that guy is. I've been watching this question period for the longest time, and I have never seen that guy get up.
The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby. Mr. Speaker, the right to housing is critical, but the housing crisis has only gotten worse since the Liberals came to power. The Liberals and the Conservatives before them sold more than 1 million affordable housing units to rich developers so that they could get rich at the expense of families. The Liberals let rents double. Meanwhile, the Conservatives helped their real estate donors get rich. Both of these parties provoked the housing crisis. Why do they want families to pay the price for what they've done? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our colleague is right to oppose the Conservatives. When the leader of the opposition was Minister for Housing for the entire country, he only managed to build 6 affordable housing units. But my NDP colleague is also right to say that the Conservative leader is cynical. He's saying that helping seniors who live in low-income housing or co-ops would be encouraging a Soviet lifestyle.
This is what I don't know if the NDP just don't get this or what. I know that they're campaigning against the Conservatives sort of in question period as well. But when you ask a question to the Liberals and blame both the Liberals and Conservatives, the Liberals aren't going to answer you. They're just going to agree that the Conservatives are the worst thing since non-sliced bread. I don't know how they're anticipating that they're even going to get a modicum of an answer, but apparently.
The housing crisis in Indigenous communities continues to be a stain on this government's record. Over 300,000 Indigenous people continue to live in unsuitable housing. The Liberals promised to build homes for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities and broke it. To make matters worse, Indigenous people are still reeling from the Conservatives' cuts to housing until this day. Liberals break promises, Conservatives gut and cut, Indigenous people pay the price. When will this government finally act to build the homes Indigenous people desperately need?
The Honourable Minister.
When the Conservatives were in power, there wasn't a housing crisis. We didn't need more housing, so we sold it off. So we could get more and more out of debt. That's why we were almost at a non-deficit, balanced budget by the tail end of the Harper era. So I really don't like how after 9 years of a Trudeau government, the NDP are still blaming the Conservatives about no homes being built and how bad the Conservatives are. When I think if you asked any one of us, we would love to have Stephen Harper back in charge. Or we'd love to be living in the same world we were in 2015.
For public services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our colleague is entirely right. That's why we have been building thousands and tens of thousands of homes for Indigenous Canadians and other Canadians in the last 9 years. Now, if we had built on the record of the Conservative leader with 6 affordable apartments in his entire mandate, we would be a long way from what is needed for Indigenous Canadians in 2024. In addition to that, as I said in French, the Conservative leader doesn't want to support seniors and Indigenous Canadians when they live in low-rent housing because he believes it encourages a sort of Soviet-style housing conditions.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
So when he talks about the Soviet-style housing, he's talking about pretty much the housing that when you go to kind of the old school Russia, where every house looks the same, everything's bland, yada, like everything's just blah, and all the houses are owned by the government. So your government is your landlord. And the government's starting to have affordable housing units that the government owns, and then you can lease it from the government. So technically, the government's your landlord, which is a communist-style housing plan. So Pierre Poilievre is right. He just wants to make it sound like Pierre Poilievre's crazy.
I gave the Foreign Affairs Minister 2 opportunities to condemn the increasingly common and terrifying anti-Semitic chants we hear in the streets. Israel will soon be gone. There is only one solution, Intifada, revolution. Twice she refused to condemn.
He's also forgetting the chant from the river to the sea. So that's also a common one we've been hearing over and over and over again.
Those remarks. She continues to pander to Hamas supporters in the Liberal Party as part of her leadership campaign rather than doing her job. So I'll give her another chance. Will she publicly support Israel's right to retaliate against the tyrants of Tehran and the terrorists in Hezbollah and Hamas to protect itself? Yes or no?
Yeah.
If we don't do politics about
I just want to encourage all members to ensure, consistent with rulings in the past, and I will come back to this near the end of question period, but just to caution all members to please be judicious in their words. The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, if there's a day where we don't do politics about people's lives being taken or people being killed, it's today. Against any form of anti-Semitism, I hope, in this House, any form of discrimination, and I really hope that my colleague in front will apologize.
That was kind of a loaded question, asking the Liberals if they thought that Israel has the right to defend itself in question period, which personally I do think they do. I don't always agree with what Israel does, but when they have their people kidnapped, I mean, they don't do what Canada does with the two Michaels and just sits there and pleads to have them back. They actually do something about it. So I think that's why the Liberals are having a little hard time answering that question. But like I said, it is a little bit loaded question for question period. But to be completely honest, and this is going to come, I'm going to mention this on a later video tomorrow. Yes, they should have the right to defend themselves, just like every other country.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
There was ever a day when we needed a government to stand up for what was right, this would be that day. This government has sought to divide Canadians by saying one thing to one group and precisely the opposite to another group. And here in this House, remaining radio silent on condemning anti-Semitic chants and on supporting Israel's right to truly defend itself by retaliating against the terrorists and tyrants. Why won't she do the right thing and stand beside the Jewish people today?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, 1 year ago in the Middle East, peace was broken by a violent terrorist attack by Hamas. On this side of the ocean, we deserve to do better in terms of the protest that we articulate. It needs to be peaceful. What that means is you don't go out on the streets and target a daycare. You don't go out on the streets and target a community center. You don't go out on the streets and target a synagogue. Our resolve to fight anti-Semitism is strong. It has been strong since this Parliament started when we outlawed the willful promotion of anti-Semitism. It is even stronger now when we're advocating for more strict penalties, which that party opposes.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Isles.
Sorry, but I don't see it. In Toronto, you see the mass mobs of people there. And may I reiterate, the stuff that they're saying out there is so bad. I can't even say the words on YouTube. I have to put it through CPAC here because and the stuff that they're showing too about the disrespect of Canada. We've never seen this before ever in Canada. And the Liberals are just sitting on their hands. Where before, I can't remember the right year, but earlier on when the Liberals were in power, when somebody put bacon on a mosque, they created a law, an anti-Israel hate, anti-Islamophobia hate law in effect, when, yeah, people were starting to put like bacon on the front steps of mosques, and they were just starting to say mean things online. Now it's not online, it's on our streets. And they do nothing. They just sit on their hands.
Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Speaker, it was you who ruled that this NDP Liberal government obstructed a lawful order of this House by not turning over the evidence in the $400 million corruption scandal. It has this Parliament paralyzed and unable to deal with the misery and chaos that's been created after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government. And taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up for the cover-up of this latest corruption scandal. So will they simply provide the evidence to the police so that this House can get back to its work of holding them accountable?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, that member is again false in his statements, because what you clearly ruled was that this matter should be sent to committee for further study, because it is the first time in this Parliament's history that it is taking its extraordinary powers and abusing them in such an egregious way. The issue with which the honourable member is discussing has been dealt with by this government, but it's up to the Conservatives to stop obstructing their own obstruction so that we can all get back to the important work of governing for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I gotta say, I can't find anything online about that. I guess I will have to go through all the CPAC videos to try and find specifically where Fergus said that it has to go back to committee, which I'm pretty sure the Conservatives are fine with. But I think what Fergus already said was that the government would have to be locked down until these documents are provided, and they haven't provided them. If there's nothing to hide, then it should be easy just to provide all of the evidence to the RCMP. Plus, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms doesn't protect the government. It protects the individual, but you're not an individual, you're the government. And that's what the Conservatives are asking for.
Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Only a Liberal would get up in this place and say that the majority of members in this House who were democratically elected, exercising powers that are legally bestowed upon this Parliament, are somehow infringing upon this government's constitutional right to not be investigated by the RCMP for their own corruption. It's absolutely unbelievable. Over 186 conflicts of interest, $400 million lining the pockets of well-connected Liberal insiders, while Canadians are lined up at food banks in record numbers. So we want to know if this government's expecting the NDP to bail them out and stop us from holding them to account.
The Honourable Minister
The answer is yes, sir. Yes, they are.
of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear about two things. In terms of a criminal prosecution, the way it normally unfolds is the police seek a search warrant from a judge. The judge evaluates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the charter interest they're at stake in getting those documents, something of which that party cares not. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we also have this fundamental premise. It's called police independence. We safeguard it in Canada. You know who doesn't safeguard it? Authoritarian regimes. I guess the leader of the opposition and his minions are sharing their blatant observation and favoritism towards authoritarian tactics in this House.
No, the Conservatives are just learning from their past mistakes from the SNC Lavalin scandal, where they let you have all of this freedom and they didn't enact these powers. And then the RCMP never got the information that they wanted. Or they didn't get it until much, much, much later. So, if they have the powers to do that, they should do that now.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, history will remember that this government is corrupt. The latest example is the Green Fund, which ultimately became a slush fund for this government's buddies. The Auditor General was scathing. The leaders of the fund gave money to their own companies 186 times. That is corruption that deserves a police investigation. My question is very clear. When will the Liberals comply with your ruling to give the documents to the police so they can do their work? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I have a great deal of respect for my colleague, for Louis Saint-Laurent, but only the Conservatives could manage to filibuster their own motion. I've never seen anything like it. Mr. Speaker, we said that we would take decisive action, and that's what we've done. We got to the bottom of things. There have been 4 independent reports. The CEO has stepped down. The board stepped down. The fund is now under the National Research Council. We believe that we have taken the right measures to ensure good governance of that program. The Honourable Member.
Of course, Champagne would stand up and say, "Oh, we did everything right away. We solved it right when we heard about it." When you have the witness one, the whistleblower, come out and say that, yeah, after he told the Auditor General that everything that was going on, the Auditor General told the witness to tell Champagne that what was going on. And then 4 months later, Champagne told the House that he did it right away that month. So it took him 4 months to shut down SDTC or figure out the problems that was going on there, and pretty much lied to the whole House of Commons and all of Parliament about how well he did. But that's all I got for you today. How do you guys think Champagne did on this SDTC scandal? Do you think he did a good job? Also, what do you think about the government pausing any business that's going on right now? Should they just kind of go, we need to get some business done. You don't have to provide the RCMP documents right now. It's against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Or should the government stay shut down until they provide those the Liberals provide those documents? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd really like to hear your thoughts on that. Also, if you like this, please subscribe. I almost hit all of my watch hours for monetization, so I just need those subscriptions, so that would really help. And also, if you like the video, give it a like. That always helps. Other than that, that's all I got. Have a great day.